excuse me, 2017 meeting. Can I have the official ceremony of turning on the recorder, please? I thought you'd push this one and this one. What'd you do? Oh,
And then, okay.
now I push it. Here. You know, I had an ice machine. It wasn't making any ice. And I took it to the repairman, and he said, seems to be working fine. I think you had a missing ingredient. And I said, gee, what is that? He said, I think you forgot to hook up the water. So whenever you think you're doing something right, there's always something disastrously wrong. Holding. Hi, welcome. What I'd like to do before we start, I'd like to do a couple things. One is I'd like to have a moment of silence for Suzanne Johnston, who was our OMBC receptionist, and she had other tasks, and she died of a serious illness unexpectedly, and she'll be missed dearly. So let's have a moment, please. Thank you very much. Next, I'd like to make mention that our longtime board member and prior president, Michael Feinstein, since our last meeting, unfortunately, due to medical illnesses, has had to resign from the board. On behalf of the board, I did send a letter to Michael thanking him for his many years of service and devotion to the profession. He'll be missed dearly. Thirdly, I'd like to welcome the students from A.T. Still University, Visalia campus. I had an opportunity to talk to them before the meeting, and they're smiling and engaged, and hopefully they'll enjoy the meeting. So I'm calling the meeting to order, and I'd like to begin with roll call.
Present.
Present.
Present. I want to make one mention that board member Dr. Lally is attending the American Association of Osteopathic Examiners and Educators in Florida, and he is representing our board at that meeting. And I thank him for that. Okay, we have a quorum. I now would like to ask if there are any public comments for items that are not listed on the agenda. None being heard, thank you. Our next item is election of officers. I would like to open up the floor for nominations for president of the Osteopathic Medical Board.
I'd like to nominate Dr. Samuto for president of the board.
Thank you. Are there any other nominations? Being none, we will now go for a roll call for election of office. Correct? May I have a second, please?
I'll second.
Okay. Yes.
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 Thank you very much. I would next like to ask for nominations for the position of vice president. Are there any nominations?
I'll nominate Dr. Lally.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
May we have the vote, please? Yes.
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 Congratulations to Dr. Lally. Next, for the position of Secretary Treasurer, I'd like to nominate Dr. Buhari. May I have a second?
I'll second.
May we have a vote, please? Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. I'd like to thank the board for their continued support of these officers. And I know that the officers will continue to serve this board in a thoughtful, professional, and responsible manner. Next item on the agenda is review and approval of minutes of October 7th, 2016. Is there a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Is there any discussion or correction to the minutes? Being none, we need to vote for acceptance of the minutes. Yes?
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. Angie, what time is Mark Ito? Ito?
I asked him to come around 11.
11 o'clock?
We'll have the hearing first.
Okay. And are the parties for the hearing here yet? I know it's a little early.
Our attorney is here. I don't think the ALJ is here yet.
Okay. Okay. So let's continue going through the agenda until those parties. Okay, I guess what we'll do is we will go to the Executive Director's Report. Angie Burton, thank you.
Thank you. The report is being provided to the board members with an update on jurors licensing, staffing, and enforcement functions at the OMBC. No action is needed at this time. License statistics as of January 1st of 2017, there are 7,783 active licenses, 587 inactive license, which totals 8,370. In addition to the above, there are still 966 licenses in a delinquent status, which means that they're still within our jurisdiction until the license cancels and it's 5 years of delinquency. In in-state licensees, we have 6,691 actually actively practicing in the state of California. 45 reside in California with an inactive license. Number of applications received in the fourth quarter, October through December of 2016, we had 239 applications, and the total number of applications for the fiscal year to date is 525, which is a substantial increase from last year. The number of licenses issued for the fourth quarter, October through December, is 155. In 2015-16, the application processing time was taking approximately 106 days, and we have implemented some changes in our application processes. We've divided our initial application process into a two-step process with two other staff assisting our licensing specialists with matching documents such as transcripts, COMLEX scores, and other primary source documents with the incoming application. With this process in place, our goal is to reduce our processing time by 30 days. So far, it looks like it is working. I have not yet ran a report, but it looks like it is shortening our time. The staffing, the number of staff remains at 11.5 with no vacancies. And as you all know, that our office technician receptionist, Susan Johnston, passed away unexpectedly in October of 2016. In late November, we advertised for this position and received over 90 applications. After careful review and selection of the most qualified applicants, interviews were conducted in the last 2 weeks of December. A decision was made this month, and we're happy to announce that Dina Ruprecht has joined the OMBC staff as our new office tech receptionist. And Dina has already attended her first Breeze training this week. We're currently reviewing our budget to see if there is adequate funding to possibly create a permanent intermittent position. This position will support staff for both licensing and enforcement units. A permanent intermittent position does not require a budget change proposal, so providing our budget can absorb the cost, we will be able to bring in a support staff this year. We have submitted our second of 3 annual workload and processing statistical report pursuant to the fiscal year 14-15 Budget Act to the Department of Finance and Legislature. This report included licensing workload statistics, licensing processing times, staff levels, and analysis of the outcome and effectiveness of the 3 positions that were granted by BCP in the fiscal year 14-15. Are there any questions?
Angie, in terms of the budget, you said we can bring somebody else, given that the budget can absorb the cost. What kind of costs are we looking at?
I think he could probably provide us, but we're looking at, first of all, the office tech is the level we'll probably bring them in at, and I think the starting salary for an OT is about $2,800 a month. But it will be a permanent intermittent, which means that they cannot work over 1,500 hours in any given fiscal year. So with that said, we have to figure out how many hours we can actually afford before we make a commitment to somebody. So hopefully Mark will be able to provide some more information when he comes here today. Okay, the CURES, Controlled Substance Utilization Review Evaluation System Update. As of November 15th, DOJ reported that 4,262 osteopathic physicians and surgeons have registered with the new CURES 2.0 system. Between October 15th and November 15th, CURES was accessed by osteopathic physicians 12,030 times, and 24,017 patient prescribing history reports, which are PARs, were run. DOJ Help Desk took 88 calls from DOs in the August through October of 2016. And pursuant to the SB 1478 Omnibus Bill effective July 1st of 2017, osteopathic physicians and surgeons holding an inactive license will no longer be required to pay the annual $6 for the CURES program. We have submitted a request to the Breeze team to change our renewal form effective the July renewal cycle to reflect the statutory change in fee. We reported at the last board meeting that UC Davis, in partnership with the California Department of Public Health, with our assistance, was conducting a survey regarding CURES and controlled substance prescribing in California. We chose the osteopathic physicians and surgeons with licenses expiring in December to be part of the survey. This was done as the December license renewals were the next renewals to be sent out, and this gave us the best opportunity to reach out to a percentage of our licensee without additional cost to the board. Flyer explaining the survey containing a link to this survey was included in each of the December license renewal notices, and the link to this survey was also provided on our website. In the first week of December, Dr. Stephen Henry at UC Davis reported that only 88 of the 577 osteopathic physicians and surgeons who were invited to participate in the CURES survey had responded, and this equated only to approximately 15% of the invitees. So Dr. Henry asked us to send out reminder notices in hope of getting more participants. So in December 15th, we sent out reminder notices, and as of last week, they had received a total of 118 response, which boosted our response rate to about 20.4%. And we expect some more responses to be trickling in before the close of the survey at the end of this month. Dr. Henry will share the result of the survey once the analysis of the survey has been completed. It's anticipated that it'll take a few months to complete.
And just a few comments for those in the audience. The CURES system is a computer-based resource where physicians and pharmacies, as well as dentists and actually veterinarians, can use access to find out who has been prescribing controlled substances, how many have been prescribed, the dates of prescription, so it allows check and balance. So if a physician is concerned of the utilization of a controlled substance, this is one way of checking whether or not there's abuse of those particular products. So it's a safeguard for protecting the patient from themselves, and it's also a safeguard for the physician to be aware and intercede for the protection of the patient. Pharmacies may call physicians to alert them if they find something, and I was going to ask Angie, is there a minimum number we need for the survey to give it substantial
No,
statistics?
he was hoping, I think he told me that the medical board came in at about a 23%, and he was wanting to get to about that same percentage. But with the fact that we didn't have an email correspondence with our licensees, all we did was submit the second paper reminder notice. The medical board used the email blast, a secondary reminder notice and everything, and came up with 23. So I think we did pretty well with 20%, and UC Davis was pretty happy with that result.
The only suggestion I had, if feasible, is I was going to ask Kathleen, if you had a list of those physicians who are OPSC members who would qualify for this, would OPSC be able to send out a reminder to those to hopefully boost the participation in the survey?
I think the survey is going to be closed at the end of this month, though,
Oh,
so we only
okay.
have another 10 days.
Okay.
Yeah,
So maybe there's no time.
yeah.
Okay.
But if any of the board members would like to, well, the physician board members would like to take the survey, it is on our website.
Oh, okay.
So you can, there's a link to the survey on our website as well.
Okay.
And Angie, can you just tell us the overall goal of the survey and why doing this is important right now?
I think that well, first and foremost, they want to know if this Cures 2.0 is working, and what the physicians feel about this new Cures program, and to see the utilization aspect of it, to see whether it's going to help this opioid problem. And that's what they're doing the survey for.
Do you know, when we mailed out the reminder responses, was the mail costs incurred by UC Davis or?
It was incurred by UC Davis. We actually created the flyer, so the only cost to us was the paper of creating the flyers, and then they picked it up and they mailed them out for us.
Can I just speak for a moment about the opioid epidemic? I don't know if in your studies in school whether they've touched upon that, but you'll see a number of things in the media, on the computers, and on the news about the unfortunate situation. And I was at a meeting where it was quoted that the United States represents, at the time, 18% of the world population, but was using 99% of the opioids, which was an astronomical number. And the issue is diversion. Not all the patients might be using the products themselves. They may be selling the product for profit. But clearly, people are making wrong judgments, using elephant tranquilizers to find God knows what and dying immediately. So clearly there's a need for the medical profession to intervene and protect people again from themselves, and doing whatever we can do on our part to educate the public and educate the physicians and the students that this crisis is continuing to worsen. And this, as I said, this cure system is just one aspect of that. Unfortunately, the federal government has to do their part for the illicit drug trafficking and things, which is another terrible part. Thank you. Angie,
Yes, that's,
that's finished?
yes.
Okay.
So we have the enforcement from Corey, if you'd like to move on, or do we have? Still 10:18.
Corey,
Okay,
thank
yeah.
you. Do you have a microphone there that you can use? Video did we get a picture feed in, or? Okay, thank you.
Good morning, Board.
Morning, Corey.
Okay, so let's, I have an enforcement report for you all to review and digest and to ask questions if you'd like. Okay, so the following OMBC enforcement report covers a 12-month period starting from first quarter of 2016 through the fourth quarter of 2016. The report is divided into 5 sections: intake, investigations, enforcement, performance measures, and probation. And the data is reproduced from the BREEZE enforcement reports. Okay, in Table 1 above, this is the main table we see under complaint intake. Under total intake, OMBC received 525 complaints. 27 of these cases were convictions, arrests. During this period, 591 cases were assigned investigations, and the average number of days to assign a case was 25. In Figure 1-2 below, that's on the bottom of the page, the average number of complaints received, the blue line, during this 12-month period averaged around 44 cases per month, with a spike of 75 cases during the month of May. For all assigned cases, the green line, the average was 49 per month. The months of February, March, and July saw a substantial increase in assigned cases, 67, 78, and 94 respectively. Any questions on that? Okay. Page 2, and Figure 1-3 below, the bar graph illustrates the monthly average of number of days to assign or close a complaint. The aging measures the period from the time the complaint was received in the office, the date stamp, to the time the complaint is assigned to investigations or it's closed. In the month of January, the aging was significantly higher at 61 days. During the first 4 months of 2016, the board failed to meet the performance target of 30 days. However, the overall average for the last 12 months was 25 days. So during that whole period, the entire average, we did meet, averaging out, we did meet that. But it was that first 4 months of 2016 where we were struggling to get those cases in. Oh, I'm going to go back on the first page. Just a note on our intake for the month of December. We still have not inputted all of our complaints in. Well, there's about maybe 10 complaints that come in December that we still haven't put into the system yet. So we're a little short on that. So that's just a note for that. So when our next report, that all of our intake December should be up to date. Okay, let's go to page 2 in the middle, investigations. Sure.
Do you anticipate, so you sort of creeped up again towards the end of the year to 29 days in December, your target's 30.
Right.
Do you think that, is it sort of a trend that over the winter?
Typically, yes. Typically, our complaints increase and we don't get them in time. So it's probably going to be over 29, the average number of days, once we get all those cases in for December. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's a pattern. We see it every period of the holidays. It usually goes up a little bit higher. We usually don't meet it. Yeah. Okay, investigations, desk investigations, page 2. For all desk or internal investigations during this period, Table 2 above breaks down the monthly totals for how many complaints were assigned and completed, the monthly aging and cases pending. During this period, a total of 593 cases or desk investigations were assigned, 587 were completed, and 137 cases were pending. The average number of days to complete a desk investigation was 93 days, that's really a good number, 93. Okay, page 3. Figure 2 below, we can see that the pending cases in green for desk investigations averaged around 132 per month, with 137 at the end of 2016. The signed cases indicate a surge during July of 94 cases, with an overall average of 49 per month. Completed desk investigations gradually decreased during the fourth quarter, with an average of 49 cases per month as well. Any questions on those internal investigations? Field sworn investigations. Table 3 above breaks down the monthly totals for field investigations assigned to the Division of Investigations. These are cases that go out to formal investigators, sworn investigators. Completed cases are either closed with insufficient evidence or referred to the Attorney General's Office for disciplinary action. During this 12-month period, 35 cases were assigned to field investigations, 36 were completed, and the average number of days to complete an investigation was 303 days. 41 cases were pending at the end of 2016. Okay, page 4, if no more questions, no questions. Starting on the top of page 4, figure 3.2 below examines the aging of completed desk and field investigations per month. So this is kind of a breakdown per month of what our numbers were for aging on all investigations. The aging is the average number of days to complete an investigation starting from the complaint received day to the date the investigation is completed. The year-to-date average to complete a desk investigation shows a very respectable 93, since the performance target is 180 days. The board succeeded in meeting this expectation each month for the duration of this period. The year-to-date average for field investigations was 303, compared with the performance target of 360. There were 5 months that failed to meet the performance target of 360. There was only one field investigation case closed during the month of November with an aging of 3 days. This was the result of the subject complying with field inspector from another state agency. So it's just, that's a very rare event to have a field investigation closed within 3 days. Usually they go out and they're open at least 6 months. So it was a case where we had sent it out to the investigators, but it was an issue that came up from another state agency on a compliance issue. Once he got into compliance, the case was closed immediately. So that was a very quick turnaround case. Okay, so starting in the middle of the page, aging for desk and field investigations. This is kind of a matrix that breaks down, 90 days, 6 months, a year, 2 years, 3 years of how many cases were that fell within those period of times. Table 4 and figure 4.1, we see the aging matrix for the number of investigations that were closed per month within a specific time period. 330 cases, or 57%, were completed within 90 days. This is both internal investigations and field investigations combined. So 57% were completed within 90 days. 158 cases, or 27%, were completed between 91 and 180 days, or 6 months. 57 cases, 10%, were completed between 181 and a year, 365 days. 18 cases, 3%, were completed between 1 to 2 years. 11 cases, 2%, were completed between 2 to 3 years. And 4 cases, 1%, were completed after 3 years. The majority of the investigations, 84%, were completed within 6 months, and 94% were completed within a year.
Before we go on, I think I harped on this last time, so I'm just going to do it one more time. I have a question on this. Your completed desk and field investigation qualifications. Can you explain how, if these are averages, right, the field investigation, how does it jump from a high in August of 705 days? Sorry. Is that better? Okay, sorry about that. How does it jump from a high of, 2 years to close one of these cases, or the case load, and then in the next month drop to 405, and 2 months later it's only 3. I don't quite understand what's going on there.
Okay, so for instance, let's look at on field investigations, there's 705 days. So there's 2 cases that we had sent, that those 2 cases were closed during that month.
Okay.
And so when we closed those 2 cases, the average between those 2 cases was 705 days. So one case could have been 1,000 days, and one case could have been 200 days, and it averaged to 705.
Okay. So I guess it highlights for me the challenges or the weakness of averages, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't always tell you the complete picture.
Right.
I'd like to have some metric here that shows us what are the oldest cases that are open. So, do we have cases that are open for 3, 4 years?
I see. I see what you're saying.
Those we have.
I see what you're saying. What's the oldest case that's open?
Yeah. I mean,
Like-
averages don't tell you a lot, right?
Right.
I mean, in some cases they're useful, but in this case, I mean, it's sort of, not that useful to say in August we had an average case closing of 705, and then in November we averaged cases closed in 3 days.
Mm-hmm.
So if there's a way to add some depth to this and tell us sort of what are the cases that you have that are open the longest, and sort of why are they open? Why have they been open for 3 or 4 years?
Mm-hmm.
And what can we do to speed that up? Or is there anything we can do? Or just having that information?
There's not much we can do to speed them up. Once they go out of our hands into the D of I or into the AG, it's really, in terms of an investigation, there's all kinds of different aspects to an investigation that can impede it. And you're talking about for instance, getting the medical files, medical records. You've got to get a release from the patients. So the investigators got to get that, or they have to, if they can't get that, they got to subpoena it. Then they've got to go and interview the subjects, and you got to figure out how to arrange all that. So that, it takes time to do that. But on top of that, some of these cases were still with HQIU, where there's been a, staff, they've struggled with keeping staff, and so staff has been down so much. Some of the investigators have 40 cases per investigator. So that's quite a bit. So if that can come into play, sometimes that adds to the aging. It's simply some of the investigators are overloaded. So
I know that that's outside of our control when we
Right.
hand it over to the field, but would you be able to add some statistics that just show us sort of, how many of these cases, if our target here is 360, which is a year, right?
Right.
So it's a year to close the case. Can we know how many of those are over that, and then how many are over 2 years and over 3 years, and just sort of, is it easy for you to get? Actually, I'm not going to ask if it's easy, but can you put that together?
Well, that's what we have in that matrix in the middle of page 4. That matrix tells us those are specific numbers of cases that were closed within a specific period of time. It doesn't give you the actual number of days, but they're within that period.
Yeah, but those are the cases that we closed. I'd like to know how many are open.
Oh, currently open.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because again, I mean, you might be closing a couple cases, but if we have 1,000 open cases, I'd like to know that.
No, we don't have 1,000.
No,
open.
Right.
Right, okay, so you want something that tells us currently open cases and what their aging is?
Yeah.
Okay.
I was wondering if you can point me to one of the charts that tells me a little bit more about the pending cases that haven't been assigned and how long they typically are pending for.
Okay, pending cases that haven't been assigned, if you go back to page 1, on the bottom, you see that red line?
Mm-hmm.
That's, pending, those are pending cases that haven't been assigned during that period. So,
And that's the number of cases, so in November, there are 35 pending cases, but is there any information in here about how long those cases are in the pending?
No, I don't have the specific number, but they don't stay there very long. Typically, it's, those cases, they'll get put into the system. Generally, the way we operate is once, our analysts will get the complaint, they'll put it into the system and then assign it to themselves. So in this case, these 35 cases, that's probably an anomaly. Usually we're behind putting cases in, so we're just putting them into the system and get them in, but we haven't assigned them yet. But typically the way we operate is once the analyst gets it and opens the case, which is the intake, they immediately assign it to themselves. So usually there's just maybe a 1 or 2 day lag of that assignment, assigning it to themselves. So, but I don't have numbers specifically on, how many days they are. But we don't have, like the medical board has like an intake section that all they do is they intake the case in there, and then someone else assigns it to an analyst.
Just a quick question. This intake for the cases are coming in through phone, email, through our website? How are we capturing those complaints from the public?
It's in the system. There's a,
From the website?
The complaints come either by paper,
Right.
mail,
Right.
or there is a website.
Website. Right, yeah. Very rarely does we take a complaint over the phone. I've done it like maybe once, but that was like years ago, where I just took it over the phone just to get it done. But usually it's online or through, through mail.
Corey,
Yeah.
I'm going to ask you to stop at this point for timing, and I want to find out, are all the parties here for the administrative hearing? Is the court reporter here? Yes. Is the representative from the Attorney General's office here? Okay. And is the judge here? Okay. So Corey, let's put you on hold.
Sure.
Let's move in so I can get back on schedule. So let's go ahead and set up for the administrative hearing. So far, so good.
Where should I set up?
Do you need power?
Yes.
I believe there's a power cord over here.
I have an extension cord, but I need a table.
Okay.
Oh, thank you.
Give one to Dr. Bragan and give one to the ALJ. Copy it. Thank you. Hi, Doctor. I'm Tantra, and I'm the attorney for the board.
Nice to meet you. Hi, how are you?
Excuse me, is it Dr. Bragan or Pragan?
Pragan.
Pragan,
Yeah.
okay.
petition for early termination of probation.
All right, good morning. We're here on January 20th, 2017, in the matter of the petition for termination of probation of Janet Praggett, DO. This matter is being heard before the Osteopathic Medical Board of California, Department of Consumer Affairs, State of California, OAH case number 2016-120456, agency case number 00-2004-001294. Will the board members please identify themselves for the record, starting to my left?
Dr. Joseph Zamudo, President.
Tony Mercado, Public Board Member.
Alan Howard.
Megan Blair.
Cheryl Williams, public member.
Dr. Cyrus Buhari.
All right, we have a quorum present. My name is Marcy Larson. I'm an administrative law judge with the Office of Administrative Hearings. I'll be presiding over the matter this morning. May I please take the appearance of the Deputy Attorney General?
Yes, good morning, Your Honor, and good morning, members of the board. My name is Tan Tran. I'm a Deputy Attorney General. I'm appearing today on behalf of the California Osteopathic Medical Board.
And Dr. Praggett, you're here representing yourself today, is that correct?
I am.
All right, so I'm just going to briefly explain how the hearing is going to proceed this morning. We have a court reporter here. She's taking down everything that's being said. So there's a few important things to remember. It's important that you speak up nice and loudly, and it's also important that you make sure that everybody takes turns talking. She can't take two people down talking at the same time. We're here today because you filed a petition for early termination of your probation. The board has the benefit of the documentation that's been filed in support of your petition. The board is concerned about any rehabilitation since your license has been disciplined. The Deputy Attorney General will proceed first. He will submit the petition and identify the records for the board. After that, the Attorney General will have an opportunity to give the board just a general overview and history of the license discipline that was on your license and the probationary terms. After that, you'll have an opportunity to present your case. You can provide the board any information that you want the board members to consider. After you've presented your testimony, the Deputy Attorney General can ask you some questions, and then the board members can also ask you some questions. At the very end, you'll have an opportunity to give any closing remarks. Right. And then after you've presented your evidence, the matter will be closed. The board will go into closed session and deliberate. You will not receive a decision today. You will receive a decision sometime in the future. Right. During the proceeding, I can't provide you any legal advice, but if you have any questions about how things are going to proceed, you can certainly ask me. If I can answer the question, I will. All right?
Yep.
All right. Any questions?
No.
All right. I'm going to just have you pull that microphone just a little closer to you so you don't have to reach so much. All right.
Yes, thank you, Your Honor. I do not have an opening statement, but I can summarize the procedural history of the case for Your Honor.
All right. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Are you ready?
And I will have you also identify the documents in the petition package.
Will do. Will do. Yes. Are you ready? Okay. Pursuant to a board decision effective August 11th, 2005, hereinafter referred to as the 2005 decision, the petitioner, Dr. Janet Praggett, was placed on 5 years probation with terms and conditions for self-prescribing and forging prescriptions. These allegations, these misconduct occurred in the year of 2004. Her California probation has been told because she has resided in Arizona and practiced medicine in Arizona in 2007, and her probationary period is now scheduled to end February 9th, 2019. Petitioner now appears before Your Honor and esteemed members of the board seeking termination of her California probation. Before we begin, I'd like to admit the evidence, if I may. Your Honor, you have a white binder in front of you. I'd like to introduce 1 and 2, which 1 is the petition for termination of probation, 2 is the notice of hearing, both of those for jurisdictional purposes.
All right. Dr. Praggett, concerning the exhibits in the binder before you, for each of the exhibits, council's identifying them for the board members and for the record. And I'm going to ask you if you've reviewed the records and if you have any objection to any of the documents, all right?
No objection.
All right then, so exhibit 1 and 2, council?
Yes.
Both are admitted.
Thank you. And I'd also like to admit the certificate of licensure of Dr. Praggett, which is in the pocket in the binder, Your Honor. That's also for jurisdictional purposes.
Right. So I'm marking that as exhibit 5 since the other documents are already identified by number.
Okay.
So exhibit 5 is the license history. Any objection, Doctor?
No objection.
Exhibit 5 is admitted.
And I'd also like to admit exhibits 3 and 4, the copy of the decision, the August 2005 decision, and the copy of the petitioner's probation file, respectively. 3 and 4 for all purposes, Your Honor.
Any objection to exhibits 3 or 4?
No objection.
Exhibits 3 and 4 are admitted.
I'd like to pass it on to Dr. Praggett, since she has the burden of proof in this type of proceeding, and I'll reserve the right to clarify or ask questions and have members of the board ask questions, if that's okay with Your Honor.
That's fine. All right, Dr. Praggett, it's now your opportunity to provide any testimony you want the board to consider. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to swear you in. So I'm going to have you please rise.
Oh.
And I'm going to please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm under penalty of perjury that the testimony you give in this matter will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Please have a seat. And because we have a court reporter here, we want to make sure we have the correct spelling of your name. So if you could just please state and spell your name for the record.
Janet, Janet, last name Praggett, Praggit.
Dr. Praggett, before you begin with your testimony, did you bring any additional documents with you that you want the board to consider today?
I think you have a copy of everything. I had a personal narrative that I believe you have a copy of.
Where would that be in the exhibits?
I believe it was attached to the petition. It is Exhibit 1-0006, in tab 1, behind the petition.
All right. All right, thank you then. So any testimony now you want to provide to the board members concerning your request?
So concerning my request, it's a little confusing. I moved up and back between California and Arizona due to family matters. But in Arizona, I have completed actually 9 years of probation. And I did a couple years there, and then I had a relapse. And in January of 2011, the Arizona board recommended that I go to a 30-day inpatient program, which I completed. And after a total of 2 years in California on probation and 9 years in Arizona, I've completed 11 years of probation. The Arizona board dismissed the probation as of September 19, 2015. And I'm considering moving back to California. And that is the reason I'm here today, to ask that the probation be removed, as I've completed a total of 11 years.
All right, anything further you want to add?
Just that what I have in the personal narrative, I have a strong recovery program in place, at meetings 3 times a week, in contact with my sponsor on a regular basis. And, I believe that, as we say in AA, it takes what it takes. It should have been a 5-year probation. It ended up being 11 years, but at this point, I feel confident with my program.
Right, so I'm going to allow the Deputy Attorney General to ask you some questions.
Sure.
As I mentioned, and then the board members will also have an opportunity to ask you some questions. And then at the end, if there's anything else that you want to add, you'll have an opportunity to do
Okay,
that.
thank you.
All right, counsel.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning, Dr. Prager.
Good
My name
morning.
again is Tan Tran. I'm a Deputy Attorney General. I represent the board in this case, and I don't want this to be an adversarial type of proceeding, but I do want the board members to hear your side of the story so they can make an informed decision. Could you just tell the board members why you were placed on probation?
Yes, back in internship in approximately 2003, I was having headaches and back pain, and I wrote a prescription for myself while I was under a preceptor in his office. And I did write more than one prescription, and then when he found out about that, he turned me into the California board, and that's why I was placed on probation.
And Dr. Prager, you do understand that technically your probation, you haven't served any time during your California probation. There's a legal term called tolling of your probation because you had practiced in Arizona and resided in Arizona. So technically, you haven't completed any of your probation in California. Do you understand that?
No, that is not correct. I completed 2 years.
Okay, 2 years. But again, your California probation was for a term of 5 years, correct? So you haven't. So you're here today to petition for early termination of probation, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And can you just tell the board members why you believe, aside from what you've told us before, why you believe that that early termination of your California probation is warranted?
Well, the probation program in Arizona is very similar to California, and even though I only completed 2 years here, I did complete 9 years there, so it's a total of 11 years. And I feel like I've spent many years doing it took me a while to realize that I needed to do it, but I feel like I've completed what I need to and complied with both boards.
And Dr. Prager, I read your personal narrative in your probation. You stated, I'm not quoting, I'm paraphrasing, that you were embarrassed when you did the misconduct, the self-prescribing and forging prescriptions, but you didn't tell your colleagues and tell anybody else because you were, quote, embarrassed. Could you tell the board members what's so embarrassing about having low back pain?
Oh, are you referring to being embarrassed for the low back pain
Yeah,
or
or
for writing
just
the
clarify,
prescription?
yeah. From what I read, it was you were embarrassed and you said that you had low back pain. That's why you had forged prescriptions in the first place. I didn't really understand why.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess I didn't want to be perceived as weak. I was new in the program. I'm older than most participants in the program, and
And I'm trying to understand, and I want board members to understand as well. To me, having low back pain or headaches, that's nothing to be embarrassed about. Why didn't you just get the prescriptions legitimately instead of forging it?
I guess that's a good question. Yeah.
Do you have an answer for the board members? This is your audience.
Yeah, I don't know. Obviously, I should have.
And I know this misconduct occurred a while ago, in 2004, and the board is in front of you today, and what they're looking for is honesty. Could you tell the board whether or not you had forged prescriptions in the past before 2004 but didn't get caught?
No, I have not.
Okay. Do you have a substance abuse problem?
Well, I believe I do, yes.
Okay, and what type of substance abuse are you, or are you having problems with?
I believe that it was, initially I wrote for the Tylenol 3, and then because I wrote more than one prescription, I believe that it was probably an opioid problem. And then the relapse that occurred in Arizona was also opiates.
Okay, and can you name the specific opiate that you were?
Vicodin.
Vicodin?
Mhm.
Okay, all right. Just let me ask you, how's your current health right now?
Excellent.
Okay, are you on any controlled substances
No.
prescribed? Okay. When was the last time you took any controlled substances?
before I went into the rehab program in January of 2011.
Okay. And what type of controlled substances were you prescribed?
Vicodin.
Vicodin. Okay, and what was the Vicodin for?
At that time, I had broken my ankle in 2008 on a hike in Arizona, and that's what it was prescribed for.
Okay. You said in 2000, I read your application, your petition, and it said in 2007 you had a relapse. What caused that relapse?
I believe it was Vicodin.
Okay. Right. Relapse of Vicodin, but what caused you to relapse into addiction?
Oh, I see what your question is. I stopped, the same story that everybody always says, they stopped going to meetings, I stopped going to meetings, I stopped being in contact with my sponsor, and I basically let my program lapse.
Okay. And why did you stop doing all those things?
That I do not know.
Okay. In 2007, did you have a support system?
I did.
Okay, what was that support system in 2007?
That support system was a sponsor and meetings.
And apparently in 2007, despite having the support system, the sponsor, and the meetings, that did not help, correct?
No, what I think the problem is that it took me a long time to be totally honest with myself. It took me a while to admit that I had a problem because I didn't want that to be true.
If the board were to grant your termination of probation, what in your life is different now
Oh my
than
gosh.
it was in 2007?
Everything is different. The biggest, most important difference is that I have admitted to having a problem with the substance. I have made connections within the community of AA and NA to be sure that I'm in constant contact. I go to meetings on a regular basis, and I think the biggest improvement is that I have finally admitted to having a problem. And then I've been very consistent about knowing how to stop a relapse from happening.
Arizona terminated their probation on you, correct?
Yes.
Against you, correct?
Mhm.
And the Arizona hearing, was it like this hearing? Where the
Exactly.
board members were present, or was it teleconference?
No, it was just like this, but they don't have an administrative law
They don't.
judge.
Were the board members present physically?
Yes.
Or okay.
Yes, physically.
Okay. In the past 7 years, have you, let's say in the past 10 years, have you had any malpractice problems?
None at
Medical
all.
malpractice problems? Okay. Okay. And in these type of proceedings, we have to err on the side of public protection. You understand that, right? So how can you assure the board members that are present in front of you today that this type of conduct will not recur?
I've had obviously a long time to deal with the problem, and I recently in July completed the probe course, which was requested by the Osteopathic Medical Board of California. And I think just the reflection on what the board is actually here for, which is public protection, and also the harm that I could have possibly caused my patients due to this problem, as well as realizing how I ethically made a mistake. That has all come to fruition. And as I said, I am now aware of the problem. I have admitted to the problem, and I am on a daily basis doing what I need to do to make sure that it doesn't happen again.
Okay. Have you ever practiced medicine while being under the influence of alcohol or controlled substances?
Controlled substances back before the 2011.
You had practiced under the influence? What type of drug were you under the influence while you were practicing medicine?
I had taken Vicodin one day while at work.
And can you just tell the board members how you got addicted to Vicodin?
You know, I don't know. I mean, I guess the incident, which, when I reread everything that the administrative law judge wrote from the original order, it became clear to me that he needed to protect the public, and the issue at that time was Tylenol with codeine, you know, and I stopped taking that and then thought I was okay. And then when I got prescribed Vicodin, and then I just took more than I needed to, I guess I don't know the answer to how or why. I guess the answer to why is because I have a substance abuse problem that needs to be addressed on a daily basis. As to how, I guess I can't answer that question.
And according to your petition, you said that you had originally been prescribed Tylenol with codeine. Who prescribed the Tylenol codeine for you?
That initial prescription many years ago was from a colleague, Dr. Stacy Nato.
Why didn't you just go back to Dr. Stacy Nato for the Tylenol with codeine?
I don't know.
Do you plan on practicing medicine in California?
And I
If
do.
your probation is terminated?
I do.
Okay, where?
Cedars Sinai, Beverly Hills Urgent Care.
And what specialty?
Urgent care.
Urgent care, I'm sorry. Do you have a job lined up yet?
I do.
Okay. And is that job contingent on the board terminating your probation?
No.
Okay. And according to your petition, you were placed on a benzodiazepine by your PCP, a primary care physician. I believe it was in 2007 or somewhere in that area. Can you tell the board members what type of benzo you were prescribed?
Gosh, that was a long time ago. I believe it was Xanax.
Xanax. And what was the Xanax for?
Anxiety.
And can you just tell the board members what caused the anxiety?
Well, probably all of this. I think that it was everything that was happening in my life at the time with regard to probation.
Okay. And I don't mean to pry, but
That's
was
okay.
there anything besides probation in your life that was stressing you out?
Probably being new at, residency, internship, learning, hours.
What will you do if the board members decide today that they will not grant your probation?
I think that's something that I would need to think about. I'm practicing currently in Arizona. And although I would respect your decision, I just feel like I've done 11 years already. And so I don't really know if I would just continue to practice in Arizona or if I would just come here and go back on probation. That's something I would have to think about.
And what if they decided to grant your probation and you had a relapse? What would you do?
Oh, I would immediately go for help.
Okay, would you immediately self-suspend your practice and notify the board?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes.
I'd like to open it up to the board members if they have any questions, Your Honor.
Right, starting to my left, please.
Dr. Praggett, thank you for being here, and it seems that you've had a long, hard course, and you've worked many, many years, and we applaud you for that.
Thank you.
What is your current practice in Arizona?
My current practice in Arizona, it's called My Doctor Now, and it's a family practice and an urgent care, so I have scheduled patients along with walk-ins.
And what type of practice is a solo group
Group practice.
practice? And how many partners do you have?
I think there are 26 people over 6 offices.
Okay. And do you have any administrative responsibilities at the clinic?
As far as,
Well,
I mean, overseeing PAs or?
yeah. Do you oversee PAs? Do you hire? Do you fire?
No, I do not.
Okay. Do you currently have a DEA certificate?
I do.
And what are you currently certified to prescribe?
I have no restrictions on my DEA.
Okay. And what brought about this opportunity at Cedars-Sinai for you?
While in Arizona, I met a man who's an entertainer in Hollywood and decided to move back to California, and so I started to look for jobs in California.
And you said that was with Cedars-Sinai Urgent Care, and where's that located?
Currently, there's one in Beverly Hills and Culver City. I believe I'll be going between the two.
And will this be full-time or part-time work for you?
Full-time.
Are there any obstacles to you completing your work at the clinic as a full-time employee?
None at all.
Thank you. No further questions.
Okay, thank you for being here. Can you just tell us what inspires you to continue with your profession at this point in your career?
Aside from student loans that need to be paid off. I mean, I love treating patients. That's what I do. I currently have a huge practice in Arizona. A lot of my patients, as well as my employer, are going to be sad to have me go. I feel that I listen to patients. That's what they tell me. And I get my greatest joy from helping them.
Have you ever helped any patients that you've been able to see from your experience that they're facing the same issues that you have, and if so, what have you done to help them?
Yes, absolutely. That's one of my greatest joys is when if somebody comes in with an alcohol or drug addiction problem. I don't reveal my personal issue, but I am able to really speak to them as to the kind of help that I believe they need.
And will you feel comfortable telling your colleagues in California that you were put on probation for 11 years? And
Yes, I already have. Mhm.
Okay, thank you. No more questions.
You're welcome.
I do have several questions. You said that you began taking Vicodin again in 2008 due to an ankle injury on a hike, but you were not in rehab until 2011. It says it was mandated rehab. So could you explain what happened between 2008 and 2011? And Vicodin was your drug of choice. I believe that's what you said.
Yes.
Who was prescribing that to you during that period?
That was my primary doctor. And so the injury was a tib-fib fracture, so I had pins and screws in my ankle, and there were mobility issues and pain issues, so I was on and off the Vicodin, which is part of the reason I think I had an issue finally admitting that I had a problem, because I felt like I could stop it, but I'm not sure what precipitated me being unable to or taking more, but that's what ended up happening at the end of 2010. And that's what alerted the Arizona board.
Can I just, I'd just like to understand the details around this. So you were intermittently on and off Vicodin between 2008 and the end of 2010,
Yes,
always prescribed by your primary care physician and no one else?
yes.
And what is it specifically that happened at the end of 2010 that alerted the board and mandated that you needed to go into a 30-day inpatient rehab?
They found a urine sample that was not at the correct temperature.
Okay. As part of the probation, you were required to submit your random urine
Random
samples?
urines, yes. Mhm.
Okay. The other question I have is about your probation in California. The order says that you would only be monitored in your practice for the first 2 years of the probation. So we're past that. I'm just wondering what would stop you then from taking this job at Cedars on this probation? What are the other reasons that you wouldn't do that? If you're no longer being monitored in your probation in California, what's the problem?
No, I'm not sure I understand your question, because my understanding was that the probation in California was for 5 years, and that tolling just meant that it was put on hold until I came back here.
I
Is
guess
that-
I want clarification on that then, because point number 12 in the order says supervised structured environment, that you're prohibited from engaging in solo practice for the first 24 months of your probation. So I understand that it's not for the remaining 3 years of the probation.
Well, I guess I didn't understand that. I was under the assumption that it was a 5-year probation.
It is a 5-year probation, but it says one of the terms is supervised structured environment only for the first 24 months of your probation. Is that correct? Can someone clarify?
That's, I guess, if council, if you have any
Let me,
information you can provide to the board members.
if I could just reread that. Okay, Dr. Praggett, if you could look at the binder in front of you, and it's, we call this bait stamp, it's tab 3, and if you could turn to bait stamp on the bottom right, AGO Exhibit 30012.
Okay.
Okay, and what Mr. Howard has just was talking about was number 12, the supervised structured environment. You stated earlier that you had completed 2 years of your California probation, correct?
Yes.
And what was that supervised structured environment that you submitted to the board? Or had you submitted some sort of?
No, I believe this, if you're referring to number 12?
Yes. If you
It,
could read it to yourself and make sure you understand it.
Yeah, I do. I think that it's saying that I cannot be in solo practice.
Mm-hmm. And it also says that respondent, you, shall submit to the board and receive its prior approval for a plan of practice limited to a structured environment. That was what Mr. Howard was referring to, I believe. Did you submit that plan of practice to the board when you first started your California probation?
I'm sorry, I thought that just meant that I could not, that I needed to be in a supervised position and not in solo practice, so that as long as I was not in solo practice, I was still continuing under the probation program in California, which included supervision.
Yes, again, I was not the attorney on the original case, but I'm reading it now, and you're reading in front of you, and my interpretation of that is that you had to submit to the board at that time, I believe it was in 2005 when your California probation began, a plan of practice limited to a supervised structured environment. I believe that's what Mr. Howard was referring to. And did you submit such a plan at that time?
No, I believe I read this wrong. I believe that it was saying that if I were in a solo practice within the first 2 years, that I would need to submit a supervised structured environment report. But I was never in solo practice.
Correct. And I don't want to fight over the legal interpretation here, but from what I'm reading, is it safe to assume that, yes, you were not in solo practice when you began your probation, but you had not submitted that plan to the board at that time, because you were not aware of such a condition, correct?
Correct. I don't recall, because what I thought this said was that if I were in solo practice for the first 24 months, that I would need approval for a plan to be supervised, because beyond this, I was also on probation where I was supervised by the board.
So I apologize, Mr. Howard. Would you like to? Okay.
I mean, my question, my reading of this is that the supervision was only during the first 24 months. When we're saying she's already served that 24 months in California. So I just was asking for clarification, if she's not required to be in a supervised environment, what would be stopping you from taking the job at Cedars despite the probation?
I guess I don't understand the question, because then I'm saying that the probation because I would go back on probation. Is that what you're asking?
You're still on probation in California, right?
Correct.
You're requesting early termination of the probation, which was a 5-year period.
Correct.
You have 3 years remaining.
Correct. I'm asking the board to.
Or February 9th, 2019, so it's not actually, it's 2 more years. But my point is, you've already served the first 24 months, which were a structured supervised environment. So unless I'm misunderstanding something, you're no longer required to practice in a structured supervised environment, correct? So you'd still be under probation, but not required to be in a supervised environment anymore. What's the drawback? What is the problem with taking the job at Cedars-Sinai if we leave you on the probation to serve out the remaining 2 years?
Well, I think because I'm asking you to consider the time that I've served in Arizona, which is 9 additional years under a very, a program that's exactly the same as California, including reports and meetings and random drug screens. So I have essentially completed 9 years in another state of the same program. And I'm asking for consideration of that time.
Just for the record, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe you stated that your job at Cedars is not contingent on the board terminating your probation here,
That's
correct?
correct.
Okay, all right.
Thanks again for being here.
Thank you.
My question is, the sponsor that you're regularly in contact with, is that sponsor located in California or Arizona?
That sponsor right now is in Arizona.
And do you plan to continue, if you move to California, with the same sponsor, or to find one?
No, I will find one in California and continue with the one in Arizona.
And looking back over reading your personal narrative, it says that you moved in June of 2007 back from California back to Arizona. Was moving in any way related to your relapse or your when you paused in regularly going to meetings and speaking with your sponsor?
I do not believe so.
And then my only other question is really a follow-up to Mr. Howard's, in that if you take the job at Cedars-Sinai and remain under probation, can you share a little bit more about why you're requesting the early termination, since it doesn't impact your practice and employment?
No, it doesn't impact the practice. It's just that, number one, it's expensive, and it requires time to, go to the urine drug screens because they don't do them on site. And then it has, I believe in California, there are 2 required meetings at a separate place from the 12-step meetings. And I just feel like I have completed a program that is exactly the same as California's. And I've done not 5 years, but 11 years.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Hi.
Do you feel like your worst days are behind you? I've been reading your narrative as well. And how's your mom?
She's fine. She's going to be 90 in February.
Okay, because it seems like there was a lapse period between that time and you moving back to Arizona or coming back to California and then moving back. So
Well, thank you for asking. I mean,
Yeah.
she still obviously has medical issues. Right now, my sister is living with her, so,
Okay.
you know.
All right. Thank you.
And as far as my worst days being behind me, I would hope so. But, I realize life always brings problems and issues, and that now I have a much healthier way to deal with them.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So just a couple questions. If the probation is lifted, then in California, you would continue addiction meetings?
Absolutely. Yes, it's just my lifestyle now.
Okay, and then just a question back in Arizona, I didn't understand. They added the 5 years in 2011?
Yes.
Because of a urine sample that they thought was not at the correct temperature.
Right, what they considered a
That-
relapse. So.
That's interpreted as deception, that you're handing them a sample that's not fresh.
I believe so, yes.
Was that what happened?
Yes.
That's it.
Mm-hmm.
Any further questions? Anything you would like to add, Doctor?
Gosh, I think I've pretty much said everything. I'd just like to thank everybody for hearing my case today. And I just hope that you all consider that I consider sobriety and recovery part of my life now. It's not something that if the probation is lifted or not will stop. It's part of my lifestyle right now. Very healthy, very active, and I have people that I can go to immediately if I feel like I get on that slippery slope, and I have done that. So I would just ask you to consider the time that I've already completed in Arizona, and also consider that at this point I have made it a lifestyle of recovery. Thank you.
Thank you. Any closing remarks, Council?
I don't have it.
All right, is the matter submitted for the board's consideration?
Yes, it is.
Doctor, is the matter submitted for the board's consideration?
Yes.
All right, the matter is submitted and the record is closed. We are off the record. I have a form that provides information on how to obtain a transcript of the hearing if you wish to get a transcript. After you get that form, you're free to go.
Thank you. And may I ask a question of how will I be mailed the decision?
And I'll have you speak to council about
Okay.
how you'll go about
Thank
how
you.
you'll receive the decision.
Thank you.
So the board is now going into a closed session, so I'd like to kindly ask our guests to take a break, hydrate, and we'll call you when we get out of closed session. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Key here, let me make sure I turn this on right. Okay. Machiko will be walking around taking lunch orders, so. So, getting back onto our itinerary, we are going to resume with the wonderful report that Corey had begun with. And I believe, what page were we on, Corey? Page 4. Page 4 of the enforcement report. Machiko, don't forget me.
Okay, going back, I want to readdress what Alan's questions were. What I can do is when I go back to the office, I can do a query there's some new database tools they've given us. So I can query what you're asking. All the new cases that are open and pending, then I can query also where they're at, if they're in desk investigation or they are at the AG's office. And then you also wanted the reasons why there's.
No, I mean, I realize that's probably a lot of extra work, but I would like to see sort of how many cases do we have that are more than 3 years?
Okay.
For example.
Okay.
More than 2 years. Our metric is 1 year, right? So.
Well, for desk and for
field.
for field, yeah, metric is
So,
one.
But I'd like to see sort of that for both. So desk, if the metric's 90 days, then how many are 180?
Oh, I
How
see.
many are, you know?
But isn't that shown in table 4?
That's closed only, but it's not open cases, so we don't
Yeah.
know how many are actually open and still being investigated.
Right.
Because they throw out the average here.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
that's why you see these crazy wild averages where 1 month you have 720-day average to close, and then 3 months later it's only 3 days average to close. So there's a lot of.
But those are
data.
completed cases, so you want what's open over the performance target.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yeah, and so then sort of so for field, I'd like, if the performance target's 360, then
Right.
I'd like to extrapolate what's still open 360 days beyond.
Beyond,
So-
gotcha, okay, that makes
Corey,
sense.
just for this- Go ahead.
Corey, if we look at page 1 and the intake monthly totals,
Mm-hmm,
so if, you're doing your report off these anyway, correct?
I'm sorry,
Except for the older cases. So we look at the intake,
right,
and we're doing dates on those when how the process goes.
right.
So we can get those numbers from this, correct?
Yeah, but I know what Alan is specifically asking,
Okay.
and there's a different database I could use that we now have that I can query the Breeze system to pull that data out.
Okay, but it is coming from these totals on page
It
1,
it
right?
is there, but it doesn't give us the
Okay.
aging.
Okay.
It's not providing the aging for cases that are specifically over our performance target. For instance, like on the intake, our performance target is to assign within 30 days. So Alan's asking, okay, for any cases that are pending, are any of those cases beyond our performance target that are sitting out there, you know? So he's kind of narrowing it down as to those cases.
Can I ask one quick question?
yeah.
Sorry. Even though we hand off the baton to the investigators,
Uh-huh.
do they understand what our expectation is? Although beggars can't always be choosers, but on the other hand, is there something that looks at their performa in terms of, because they're doing investigation for us as well as for
Yeah, the
FTC?
performance target is a DCA
A
overall.
DCA standard.
Right, the
Okay.
360 days.
So they know that they're expected to
Right.
go by the DCA standard.
Right.
So we don't have to crack the whip. Okay.
Right, but
So-
it's kind of, for field investigation, that's tough right now because of the current staffing levels. So,
I understand.
Yeah.
So you'd be able to provide us with the number of cases above the metric, just as a raw number, but not necessarily the why, that's the thing.
Right,
We
exactly.
can't get that information.
Yeah, I mean, the why is a little more subjective than, but I can provide the metric in terms of cases that are above the performance target. Right.
And Corey, just really quickly, one more thing. Can you just tell us really briefly what a desk investigation versus a field?
Can you speak up?
A desk complaint versus a field?
How many desk investigations?
No, just the difference, maybe for the students, something really briefly on the difference.
Oh, desk investigations are cases in which we internally in our office that we can actually investigate. It's mostly, generally, just comprises of us getting the medical records and any statements. We send that over to, in responses from the doctor, and we send that to our medical consultant, Dr. Kirpin. He reviews those cases, and generally, a good 80% of those cases are closed without merit. So from some of those cases, we do send on to investigations, formal investigations, but that's typically what a desk investigation, internal investigation is.
Thank you.
So, and they comprise the majority of our complaints.
Thank you. Page 5?
Hmm?
Page 5.
Okay. Okay, enforcement actions. These are cases in which we've sent to the Attorney General. For all enforcement actions, Table 5 above breaks down the monthly totals for each disciplinary action. During this 12-month period, 20 cases were transmitted to the Attorney General's office for disciplinary actions, 16 cases and statement of issues. A statement of issue is a case where someone's applying for a license and we have an issue with that, so we basically they apply for a license, we deny it, then there's a hearing. So 16 accusations and statement of issues were filed, 20 final disciplinary orders were filed. One accusation was withdrawn, 2 cases were closed without disciplinary action, 5 citations were issued, 2 interim suspension orders, and 2 court-ordered PC-23s were ordered. At the end of the second quarter 2016, there were 23 pending AG cases. Actually, that should be at the end of the fourth quarter 2016. So there were 17 cases pending. That's what that should read. So just for clarification, a PC-23 order, that is an order in which there's a criminal case pending on the subject, and we go into the Superior Court and we ask the judge to suspend his license. So kind of an attachment to that criminal order. Okay, so we see figure 5.1, that's just kind of a bar graph of all of the enforcement orders. And then table 6, that's our total final orders aging. So all our orders, we've had 20 final orders, disciplinary actions, either settlements or decisions. That matrix gives us the aging within those time periods. Moving on to page 6. In table 6, the previous page, and in figure 6.1, we see the aging matrix of the 20 final orders that were completed from, get another error here, should be first quarter 2016 to fourth quarter 2016. The aging measures the period from the date the cases was received in the office to the order date, file date, the final order. The pie chart shows the percentage of cases distributed within each time period. Of the 20 final orders, 2 cases were completed within 180 days. 4 cases within 100, or 20% within 181 to 365 days, 6 cases within 1 to 2 years, 3 cases within 2 to 3 years, and 3 cases within 3 to 4 years, and 2 cases over 4 years. 60% of the final orders were completed within 2 years. So.
That's good.
Okay, so performance measures. Cycle time intake, the average cycle of time to from a complaint receipt to the date the complaint was assigned to an investigator. During this 12-month period, we can see that our performance target was 30 days, and that we see basically the first 4 months, I'm sorry, of 2016, we didn't meet that performance target, but the remaining months of 2016 we did. Moving on to performance measure 3, average number of days to complete the entire enforcement process for cases not transmitted to the Attorney General. So this includes intake and investigation. So as you see, our performance target is 360 days. And during this 12-month period, we met that performance target.
Job well done.
Yeah, this is good, yeah. I don't know how it's going to be since we've gone over to, we're using new investigators now, new departments. So I don't know how that's going to pan out next.
But we have data to show where we've been.
Right.
And then when the new investigator takes over, he's either going to meet or exceed or not. And at least we have a standard for him to compare it to.
Right, I think, yeah, I'm not sure about this one. I'm kind of wondering how, we do have cases I know that are outstanding 360, so, at this point. But this is an average, though. These are averages. So there are cases that probably, during that period, did exceed the 360. So these are averages, so, per month, so. I think what happens is, I think a lot of the field investigations didn't meet this 360, but because we have so many desk investigation cases that were way under it, that the average is below the 360. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, PM Cycle 4, average number of days to complete the entire enforcement process for cases transmitted to the Attorney General for formal discipline. Includes intake, investigation, and transmittal outcome. As you see, our performance target is 540 days, and we did very well with, March, April, May, July, November. So this cycle time, I believe, measures the 20 final orders that, during that period of time. Again, this is out of our jurisdiction a lot of time because it goes over to the Attorney General. There's different areas things that come up that can prolong a case. Any questions on those performance targets, performance measures? Okay, finally, probation. There are currently 43 probation cases, of which 34 cases have cost recovery order. To date, the total ordered cost recovery is $300,171.72. As of January 18th, $223,910 have been paid, leaving a balance of $76,261 that remain to be paid. So those are cases right now that are currently open probationary cases. And
Any
then
questions for Corey?
Go ahead, any questions?
Thank you, Corey, for.
Well, one final thing, just for the board to note that we have 12 of our expert reviewers. We have expert reviewers that go in and do our cases, have completed a expert review training through, the medical board provides this training. So 12 of them have completed that training, not yet, and of that, of those 12, we have a very diverse select of expert reviewers that have completed that. Do you want me to name those individuals, or do you care?
These are the individuals that Don coordinates using these
Correct,
people?
correct.
Okay. Don, do you want their names read off?
I'm sorry?
Would you like our expert reviewers' names read off for the record?
Yeah, I would,
Okay.
Okay, so we have,
and their specialty.
And their specialty. Please proceed.
okay, Ralph Knapp, he's family medicine. Richard Bond, geriatrics. Shirley Wong, OBGYN. John Kowalczak, urology. Gary Graham, family medicine. Donna Marino, pediatrics. Dan, how do you pronounce it, Muley? Muley, Dan Muley, sorry. Neurosurgery. Geraldine O'Shea, internal medicine. Mark Lynch, pain management. Deborah Arsenault, OBGYN. Brian Lovelace, and Eric Lind. What was Brian Lovelace? OPP. And then Eric Lindvall, orthopedics. So they've completed the, it's a special training that the medical board provides.
Excellent.
So that's good news for us that we were able to get that done.
Okay,
That's it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, thank you.
Moving on, is Mark Aido here? Welcome, Mark. How would you like a podium, or you want to sit?
I can sit right here, it's fine.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Is he on camera when he sits here? Oh, okay. Mark is coming to us from the DCA Budget Office, and we welcome here, and you have the floor.
Yep. Good afternoon, everyone. I've been asked to come today to your meeting to discuss your board's budget and answer any questions regarding your budget for this year. Please feel free to ask any questions as they arise, and I'll also welcome questions at the end. All programs under DCA participate in incremental budgeting. That means the starting point of every year's budget is the prior year's Budget Act, which is approved by the governor. From there, various current year and budget year adjustments are made. These are through BCPs, budget letters, et cetera. And the end result this year for your program is an appropriation of $2.211 million. And this is the figure that was included in the governor's budget that was released earlier this month. Now, in your budget package, you have two forms of fund condition and expenditure projections. And since the projections were mailed to you, fiscal month 6, which is the expenditures, has been released. So I did a new expenditure projection for you that I'll hand out to you when I go over that. Now, as for your fund condition, this document shows prior year actual data and authorized data for fiscal year 16-17, and then there's formula-driven calculations for the out years. Now, the first year is your beginning balance, and that's the money that's in your account to start every fiscal year. And the next row reflects the amount of revenue that you guys bring in, so that's added to your beginning balance every year. And then the third section reflects your actual data that you're going to be, that you spend in 15-16, and then what was included in the governor's budget for 16-17 and 17-18. So when you take your beginning balance and you add your revenue, subtract your expenditures, you get your ending balance, which is the fourth section at the bottom. And then there's also the months in reserve that you'll see at the bottom there. Now, kind of an easy way to look at the months in reserve is if your program doesn't bring in any more revenue, it's how many months your program could sustain operations prior to becoming insolvent. So as for your fund condition, your fund is healthy at this point. You're working with a slight structural imbalance, meaning that you spend a little more than you're bringing in. So as you can see, your months in reserve are going down. It looks like a month or two every fiscal year. But with that said, you guys do have a pending $1.5 million general fund loan repayment that has not hit yet. That's built into 1920 at this point. And we reassess those general fund loans every year. So if your months in reserve get low, that will be repaid to you, and then your months in reserve will go up. So I'll take any questions on the on your fund condition if you have any.
Angie, do you have any questions? No.
Okay.
Bailey doesn't have any, I don't have any.
So now I'll move on to the expenditure projections. I have the new projections with the new fiscal month that I'll hand out. If you don't mind, I'll walk up
One
and hand
question?
Yeah.
Do we have anything in the budget that allows us to expand the facilities for the staff?
You did have a BCP approved last year that kicked in this year for $50,000. So my understanding, and I'm working with Angie's going to work with facilities because for 16-17, it's going to go into a potential moving cost. And then for any of the out years, it's an ongoing appropriation increase that'll go toward your rent increase. So anything that you guys need to do was included in that BCP. So, and then if further funds are needed down the road, we can look at getting those funds through the annual budget process.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
And what were you going to be handing out now?
New expenditure projections, because we got new data in for your expenditures since it was mailed out to you. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
As you can see, everything's a team effort. Thank you. Okay. Next on our agenda, we have Veronica Ham, who is DCA Deputy Director of Communications. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought the handout was the last thing. It was a gift.
I think
I'll go over if you like.
I'm sorry.
Oh, it's okay.
Veronica, please excuse my abruptness.
Okay, so in regards to your current year expenditures and revenues as of FM6, you guys are currently spending within your budget and are on track to meet or exceed the total revenue projection for this year. Now, I spoke with Angie. Angie's had me cost out a permanent intermittent OT position, not an office technician, because you guys are looking into bringing that in to help alleviate some of your workload. Now, with a PI position is kind of interesting because they can work anywhere from 0 to 40 hours a week, but they can't exceed 1,500 hours a year. So in terms of costing it out, there is definitely a range that could potentially happen. So it could hypothetically be 0, because you can just never work them, or at the max of that, it could be approximately $60,000. Now, something I've been working with Angie on to see if we can fit it into our budget. And now with these December's numbers, we just got this CalSTARS report earlier this week. I did the projections. I'm going to meet with Angie shortly to kind of make sure that I'm accurate on these projections. We can make sure that you guys could absorb that within your current appropriation. So, I think it's looking good at this point, but I want to meet with Angie to make sure that some of these numbers are correct, particularly the enforcement numbers. So, so with that said, I'll take any questions that you guys have about the budget building process, any questions about it, your fund, your budget, anything else you have at this point.
Quick question on the BREEZE program.
Yeah.
Do we need to do any additional changes, or do we foresee any expenses coming from having to build something to accommodate our needs for the board?
Yeah, currently the Breeze is included in your budget at this point. I don't have the actual numbers that are dedicated particularly, specifically for Breeze. I can get that to Angie and send it off to you guys if you'd like, but right now it's currently included in your budget. Yeah.
For the audience, can you just mention to them what the function of the Breeze system is?
I'll go high level on this. I don't know. I don't want to get into the weeds on the Breeze system, but Breeze is our new computer system that we use, particularly for you guys, for applicants and licensees, and there's an online feature of it, and it replaced our legacy systems that we previously had at the department.
IT.
IT, yeah. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Where in the budget is the IT budget?
The IT budget falls under the departmental pro rata, which is about halfway down it's the first line under departmental services.
Department services.
Yeah.
So that includes the BREEZE and anything else included there?
Yeah, there's other functions that are appropriated for that line item, but I want to say it's predominantly IT.
Because I'm thinking if we were to move to do more things online, like take in more documents, is that going to be in the budget if we need maybe like an engineer or somebody to kind of accommodate those needs as we build the website, or?
I don't know in terms of bringing in staff for. I'd have to touch base with the budget office, the IT, and get back to you on that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Yeah, that's it.
All right,
Thank you.
let's give him a round of applause.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I just want to add that Mark is awesome.
Anybody who can sort through these numbers is awesome, believe me.
All right, thank you.
Okay.
All right, have a great day.
Now, Veronica Hams, who is DCA Deputy Director of Communications, Board Outreach, is finally here. Thank you for coming. We appreciate it.
Good afternoon, President Zamudio and members. Thank you for having me here today to speak to you about what the Communications Division at the Department of Consumer Affairs can offer the board in terms of outreach. Just wanted to speak a little bit on our division, but also introduce myself. If you don't know, I've only been here for shy of a year. I started February of last year, came from the legislature, was in the private sector, and also in television prior to coming. Worked on campaigns like Don't Trash California and Click It or Ticket. But now I'm here at DCA, and I have the privilege of working with a talented group of individuals who make my job a lot easier, and hopefully the board's job easier moving forward as well. We work in tandem with the boards to try to reach their target audiences, whether that be consumers or licensees, and we will be showing a video, which is why the screen is coming
Should we
down.
move out of the way?
Not at this time. It won't play yet. I'll cue it up. We work, like I said, with the executive officers to come up with campaigns and to reach your licensees or consumers. The best selling point we have is that we are included in your pro rata services, so working with us won't cost you any more unless you will be using our in-house print services. We're comprised of 2 units, the Office of Public Affairs, and then Publication Design and Editing, and the Digital Print Shop. Within Public Affairs, we have a whole host of information officers that work to develop communication plans with you, also work with the media. If there are any media inquiries, we are the first point of contact for the board, and we work in tandem to develop responses and strategize how to best respond to those inquiries. We will take the hard questions for the board and allow the board to speak on their behalf for the positive and enlightened stories to tell to the public. We also do webcasting. As you know, Bryce is here webcasting on your behalf so that we remain transparent. And the process, I'm sure Angie is very well aware and works closely with our office to get that done. In Office of Public Affairs, we also do video production. And this is where I'll cue the videos so that we can take a look at some of the past work we've done to give you a preview of what we can do also for the board. So if Bryce can play that.
Movie.
And I think, unfortunately, the sound may not be working. But you can see the production of it. Along with it, the office would work in developing the script, which would be the sound to the video, and the videographers would piece it all together with the board and make any additional edits to it. That is for the public. This particular video was for the Medical Board of California to educate consumers on what to look for and how to check the license of their doctors.
First, go to our website, www.mpc.ca.gov.
Hear it just a little.
Click on License Search. This can be done at 2 places on the main page, here or here. Click on Physician and Surgeon. Click on Search by Name. Enter your doctor's last name. Make sure you have the correct spelling. Enter the first initial of the doctor's first name, then click Search. Scroll down to see if any disciplinary actions are listed. If not, you will see none found. If there are actions, you will see found, and it looks like this. If you have any questions about what you are seeing, go to the Physician Profile Description page. You can also email your questions to webmaster@mbc.ca.gov or call the board at 1-800-633-2322.
Yes. We could create a Facebook page and a Twitter page for the board and post it online. We also have a blog where we can put that on our blog site, on our Facebook site, also email it out to licensees or to consumers. But it just shows that we would work with you to develop the script, find the talent, voice it, produce it, and again, that's all part of Pro Rata.
That's part of our 5-year plan, is to improve communication, physician to physician, as well as physician to public.
Definitely. There are a lot of national holidays or months recognizing specific industries and professions, and so to capitalize and utilize those to educate consumers and licensees and physicians all alike, finding those opportunities and then developing the content to push out during those times would be what we would love to work with you guys and get some of that stuff going. So besides the videos, we also have our publication design and editing team, and the digital print service. And again, award-winning team who produces, I didn't put in your board packets, but some examples of the newsletters that they produce. We produce a monthly communications, Consumer Connection magazine where we could place articles on their behalf in here. We have a team that will develop the content, work with you and write it. If you write it, we'll edit it on your behalf. And we also encourage, obviously, always to work with the legal department to make sure that it's accurate and sound, but we will work together to go ahead and do that as well. So
What's the timeline where these services would be available?
we can start tomorrow if you'd like, to work with you.
On Saturday, I don't do anything on Saturday.
Monday, we
Thank
can
you.
say
Oh,
Monday.
Monday's good.
All it would take would be to work with Angie to set up an initial meeting, kind of have a deep dive and discuss what opportunities are out there, what you've done in the past, if anything, and where we can develop that communication plan with you moving forward.
Would that be the platform where, board members would, write up a piece and put something in that would be appropriate for publication?
If we would find the proper channels to do
Right.
that, depending on what it is. A lot of the consumer connection, it is very jurisdictional. So if there's something interesting going on within the profession and you write a piece on that, we would love to take it and then fit it into the publication to make sure it meets the content needs. But yes.
I mean, one of the other things that I think is good to hear is why public service and why do people work for DCA and what brought you here and what's your your little story about why you're there. I mean, because then you can get the spark going in other people in their communities to take activity in.
Definitely. I mean, personal stories is what always brings engagement. If you can relate to somebody on a personal level, that's the best avenue to take as well. So that's all I have for you today. If there are any other questions.
Was there anyone else speaking besides yourself?
Quick question, and in terms of like metrics for how we're doing with our campaigns, how do you guys evaluate that?
That is something we have to venture in at this time. There are always Google Analytics that we can look at. A lot of, if there's Facebook posts, we can pull analytics from Facebook as well, but we have not, and from my experience being here, have not tracked that diligently, but it is definitely something we can explore. Not to my knowledge, no.
I guess my question would be that if we'd like to have videos,
Mhm.
there are people who, I'm assuming you do the videos. I mean,
Correct.
we just give you the idea of what we'd like the video to be.
You'd give us the idea, the concept. If you have a script in mind, we can work with it. If not, we can work with you to develop that. Bryce back here is an amazing videographer, and he will edit and put together a storyboard to present as well to Angie. And then from there, we'd find talent depending on the type of video you'd like to create, either the one like the medical board, or it could be completely graphical, and that would be pieced together in our office.
Students, you're really video, electronic.
What makes sense?
Yeah, what makes sense to you as far as the best media to disseminate information to the student populace?
Facebook always works great.
Facebook.
Yeah. Well, especially the videos. You click on it right away and you can watch it. If the video is short, you get your information. And
That's the best media? Okay. Content? Anything? Everything? Anything you guys need to hear or know?
I know there's a national campaign to kind of educate people about DOs and what DOs do. Is that part of the plan for the California Medical Board?
Some more support for their profession. So you're saying maybe have more support for your profession, for the consumers, to understand what you do?
Yeah. I mean, there's the national, then the local, and, there's always things going on. As far as what's been happening currently is OPSC, the Osteopathic Physicians and Surgeons of California, which is the medical association, has been involved with that. And doctors are on TV or radio, write articles, and we typically, when that happens, we disseminate that to the membership so they see what's going on.
We have also created somewhat of checklists for students and licensees and other boards and bureaus to say, if you're going to renew a license, here are the top things you need to do. So it's just a graphical reminder. Or, the educational cycle, if a group of students are going to graduate, what do they need to do before they take the exam or before they enter into the profession? Here's the boards providing you those helpful tips. So that's something to do as well.
So we could do like a tutorial video on our website for applicants?
Correct.
Oh, good idea.
Mm-hmm.
Very good.
Educate them how to fill out the application, what the board looks for, those things.
Okay. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate you being here. What I'd like to do is do a special order of business. Well, I will read this. This is a special recognition for our board member, Dr. James Lally, who currently is in Florida at the national meeting. Dr. Don Kerpen lives in the vicinity of Dr. Lally, and he will be the carer of this. So can I have you sort of stand in effigy of Dr. Lally, and I can read this for the record?
I'm prettier than he is.
Pardon me?
I'm prettier than he is.
Yeah, exactly. Would you rather read this? You want to read this? All right. He's got too many initials after his name. This is from the California Department of Consumer Affairs, honoring James Michael Lally, Physician of the Year. Whereas James Michael Lally, D.O., M.M.M., F.A.C.O.F.P., F.A.C.P.E., F.A.O.A.S.M., C.P.E., C.M.D., has been an osteopathic physician and surgeon educator since 1991. And whereas in his capacity as president and chief medical officer of Chino Medical Center, he has led his organization to earn numerous national awards, including Truven Top 100 Hospitals for 5 consecutive years, Women's Choice Award for Best Hospital for Emergency Care for 2 consecutive years, Safe Group's Top 100 American Safest Hospitals for 2 consecutive years, Health Grades Recognition for Patient Safety Excellence Award, Saving Lives with Award-Winning Care, and San Bernardino County's Best Workplace for 2015-2016. And whereas he has served as the team physician for the U.S. shooting team since 1993 and as elected president of the National Governing Body of Shooting 2004 to 2010 and 2014 through present, he has been the chairman of the International Shooting Federation Medical Committee and standing member of the International Olympic Committee's Medical Commission since 2006. And whereas he has recently attended his 6th Olympic Games in Rio de Janeiro as the Chief Medical Officer for the Independent Shooting Federation and Medical Director of Shooting Events and Venues of the Games of the 31st Olympiad, and whereas since 1991 he has served in some position in education, touching the lives of medical students, interns, residents, fellows, urging them to excel in their chosen profession field while maintaining a level of compassion, empathy, common sense, if you know Jim, common sense. And whereas he has served the state of California as appointed to the Osteopathic Medical Board 1998 through 2001 and 2012 through present, and as consultant from 2001 through 2012, protecting the safety of the population of California and ensuring the highest ethical and moral standards of the osteopathic profession. And whereas as a local community leader, he has provided pre-participation physicals for over 20,000 high school athletes since 1994, and as well coordinated and provided weekly physical attendance at home football games for the 4 high schools in the Chino Valley Unified School District. And whereas he has been the medical director and financial supporter for the Montclair Medical Clinic and the Monta Vista Clinic for the past 25 years, providing care to those less fortunate and to help ease the burden on already overcrowded emergency rooms in their respective communities. And whereas he has served the osteopathic profession loyally, steadfastly, participating at all levels of leadership, culminating in his recent appointment to the Board of Directors of the American Osteopathic Association. Now, therefore, it is with great pleasure that the Business, Consumer Service, and Housing Agency and the California Department of Consumer Affairs commends James Michael Lally for his designation as Physician of the Year of the American Osteopathic Foundation. Let's give him a round of applause. He's actually watching this being streamed from Florida, and we already sent him a picture of this. And I want to thank Dr. Kirpin, who is his mentor.
I tell you what, I'm very happy to receive this for Jim, and I'm very proud of Jim. I was the dean and then the provost of Western for 17 years, and he has achieved more than any of my other graduates in his career. He's really an outstanding guy, and is he watching really?
Yeah, yes, yes.
Jim, I love you.
Yeah. And as part of our oath, you live each and every day as an osteopathic physician should. He's the example, and we're lucky to have him. Thanks, Don.
Thank you.
Pass it on.
I will get it to him.
Jim, thanks very much for everything. Okay.
It's a good thing you can't listen to me.
Item number 10, Title 16 California Code of Regulations. Are we ready to roll?
Yes.
It was nice.
Actually, I'd like to start with the proposed
Mike,
change.
you need a mic.
Thank you. Okay, I'd like to start with the proposed changes to continuing medical education renewal cycle and renewals. I don't know if I need to read, would you like me to read this?
What page are we?
This is actually the third, yeah, it's tab
Tab 7?
tab 7, and it's the second of the memos.
The second memo?
Second memo, which says proposed changes to continuing medical education renewal cycle and renewals.
Is it the OMBC revision to CME renewal required to add audit and self-certify?
No,
Is that the one?
it's the next one.
The one after that?
Yeah, before we talk about the audit, I wanted to talk
Okay.
about the change. I don't know, did you want me to read this? I don't know if you have had a chance to read this or not, but I could read it if you'd like.
Is that the continuing medical education
Yes,
self-certification
yes.
form of renewal?
I've read it, I don't know about the rest of the.
Has all the board read these documents in full? I've read them 3 times.
Okay, I just wanted to, at the last board meeting, I do believe that we all agreed that the cycle, reporting cycle needed to be changed from 3 years to 2 years to coincide with a license renewal. And at that last meeting, we talked about starting regulatory changes, the regulation language. But after speaking with Jason, our wonderful legal counsel here, we decided that just changing the regulation, I don't believe is going to be enforceable unless the statute itself was changed. So we spoke with Kathleen, and Kathleen was kind enough to put us in touch with the B&P committee and the Senate, and we talked about the change in the statute. So this is what we're bringing to you, is the language that we're proposing to put into the statutory change. It would be B&P Code Section 2454.5. And basically, all we're doing in that section is changing the date when it becomes effective, of course, and then the completing of the minimum of 100 hours over a 2-year calendar year cycle rather than the 150 over the 3-year cycle.
Can I ask a question that I was thinking about? Was the calendar year, will it start January 1st and end December 31st?
Yes.
For each of those? Okay.
Right.
And as we transition, because we're going, are we going to still do birthday, or no, we're going to just do year to year?
The renewal remains on a birth month renewal.
Renewal is, but
The
not the
CME is going to be on a calendar year. So what
Got it.
they'll be submitting with their renewal is the 2 prior consecutive calendar year of CME.
Okay, thank you.
So we just need your approval instead of doing, well, we will work on the regulation to better describe the types of CME that still need to be submitted and the reporting cycle and so forth. But in order to do that, we should change the statute that
So
applies to that.
You're asking the board to vote on accepting
Accepting the change.
the change
Yes.
to forward to legislature to,
Right.
okay, so that's the first thing we
This-
need.
Yes, and they're going to be, I do believe, carrying it in the sunset bill for us, correct?
Okay. So can I first have a motion to accept the document?
We're just accepting 2454.5.
Press, yes.
I'll make a motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Discussion. Vote.
Public comment?
Oh, thank you for reminding me. Is there any public comment? Mike, please. Did I, yeah?
There we go. Okay, thank you. Kathleen Creason, Osteopathic Physicians and Surgeons of California. OPSC is very strongly in support of this. The current structure creates a lot of confusion among physicians about how much CME to present and what time frame. So we strongly support this change. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other comments? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote.
Oh,
You want to do the vote?
Cheryl Williams? Thank you. Dr. Buhari?
Yes.
Dr. Zamuto?
Yes.
Claudia Mercado?
Yes.
Alan Howard?
Yes.
Megan Blair?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
The second part of this CME change is the proposed regulatory language, which we will be working on alongside with the BMP change. And this is what kind of explains the requirement, the number of hours of what CME documentation or actually category is required, how they would be submitting it, and Section 1635 requirement is the continuing education requirement. Each physician and surgeon submitting a tax and registration form or fee shall submit satisfactory proof to the board of ongoing compliance with the provisions of this article at the time specified herein. Section B, commencing January of 2018, each physician and surgeon shall complete 100 hours during a 2-year period immediately preceding the expiration date of his or her license in order to satisfy the CME requirement. This 2-year period is defined as the CME requirement period. C, the requirement of 100 hours during the 2-year CME requirement period shall include a minimum of 40 hours of CME in American Osteopathic Association Category 1A or 1B, defined by the American Osteopathic Association, AOA. The balance of the CME requirement of 60 hours may consist of CME as defined by either the American Osteopathic Association or the American Medical Association and shall be completed within the entire 2-year CME requirement period. Effective January 1st of 2018, the 2-year CME period shall commence for those licensed on or before January 1st of 2018. Those licensed subsequent to January 1st of 2018 shall commence their 2-year CME requirement period on the first full calendar year subsequent to initial licensure. Subsequent 2-year period shall not include CME earned during a preceding 2-year requirement period. E, the AOA Category 1A or other CME is defined by the American Osteopathic Association, set forth in the American Osteopathic Association's Continuing Medical Education Guide, and is hereby incorporated by reference and can be obtained from the AOA at 142 East Ontario Street, Chicago, Illinois 60611. It is published once every 3 years by the AOA, most recently in 2016. American Medical Association, AMA, CME, defined by the American Medical Association, is set forth in Physicians Recognition Award Information Booklet and is hereby incorporated by reference and can be obtained from the American Medical Association. Change the address, AMA Plaza, 330 North Wabash Avenue, Suite 39300, Chicago, Illinois, 60611-5885. It is published on an occasional basis, most recently in 2010. All physicians and surgeons shall complete a one-time mandatory 12 credit hours of continuing medical education in subjects in pain management and the treatment of terminally ill and dying patients is a condition of renewal. Each physician and surgeon shall self-certify compliance with this one-time requirement subject to audit on the renewal form. The physician and surgeons shall complete this requirement within 4 years of their initial licensure or by their second renewal date, whichever occurs first. And that section was added, it's been in the statute, but it was never in our regulation, so we want to add that into this regulation. Amendment 2, which is Section 1636, Continuing Medical Education Progress Report. Each physician and surgeon shall report the total number of continuing medical education CME hours to the board with the renewal application. This may be accomplished by effective January 1st of 2018, each physician and surgeon shall self-certify completion of the required continuing medical education CME hours by submitting to the board a completed continuing medical education self-certification renewal form, OMB 21, effective January of 2018, which is hereby incorporated by reference. Incomplete forms shall not be deemed ineligible for renewal. Shall not be deemed ineligible. Is that right?
No.
It's wrong. Incomplete forms shall be deemed ineligible, right?
Scratch the
Yeah,
not.
so should not be there, okay. CME categories are defined by Section 1635. C, effective January 1st, 2018, physicians and surgeons shall be subject to audit of their CME hours. Each physician and surgeon shall retain all documents that demonstrate compliance with the CME requirement. Documents demonstrating compliance include a copy of their computer printout of CME activity as compiled from documents submitted to the AOA Division of Continuing Medical Education by both sponsors and the physician, individual activity report, which will list the amount of CME credit hours, or 2, copies of any certificates given for the CME credit hours attendance at any program approved by the board, or 3, reports from any program approved by the board to be furnished by the physician and surgeon showing his or her CME credit hours of attendance as verified by the program organizers. And we're taking the strikeout is what was in which we're removing. And everything that is underlined is what's replacing the strikeouts. Okay, Amendment 3 is a CCR 1641 sanctions of noncompliance. Any physician and surgeon who has not completed 100 hours of approved CME during the 2-year CME requirement period will be required to make up any deficiency unless a waiver is obtained pursuant to Section 1637. Any physician who fails to complete the deficient hours shall be ineligible for renewal of his or her license to practice medicine until such time as the CME are documented to the board. It shall constitute unprofessional conduct and grounds for disciplinary action, including the filing of an accusation or citation and fine for any physician to misrepresent his or her compliance with the provisions of this article or who fails to comply with the provisions of this article. C, the board shall randomly audit physicians and surgeons who have reported compliance with the CME requirement. Those physicians and surgeons selected for audit shall be required to document their compliance with the CME requirements as specified by this article. Each physician and surgeon shall retain records for a minimum of 6 years of all CME programs attended, which indicate the title of the course or program attended, dates of attendance, and the length of the course or program, the sponsoring organization, and the accrediting organization, if any. So last time we talked about a kind of a hybrid audit where we expected all the licensees to document their AOA hours, but that we would audit at a later time of the AMA or the non-osteopathic credits. I explained the the reason for the change or the request to change that in this memo, and I don't know if you had an opportunity to read the memo or not. We spoke with the staff who are the compliance coordinator, CME compliance coordinator in our office, and they said, if we have to audit, if we have to add up the AOA hours for every licensee and then later on audit the AMA or the non-osteopathic hours, that's doubling the work of what they're doing now. Because right now they're actually reviewing all the CME that comes in. All we're changing by this hybrid would be that only the AOA hours are being reviewed, but the AMA hours would be later audited. So we came up with this idea of possibly, if the board approves, to do a 100% audit at a later time. So what they're going to do, and we included a copy of what we'd like to propose, is the certification form, the self-certification form, which is included in the packet here. That we will include with the license renewal form. And every physician will be required to complete this self-certification form indicating how many hours they've completed, whether they've completed their 12-hour pain management course, and sign under penalty of perjury that they've done the CME. And then if this is filled out and is attached to their renewal form, our CME coordinators will actually renew their license. And then after the 2-year cycle, well, after we provide the physicians the chance to have completed the 2-year cycle, we'll start a 50% audit, meaning that 50% of our licensees will be audited the first year. And then after the 4-year cycle, then the other 50% could be audited, which means that everybody at one time or another is going to end up being audited. But this will actually prevent us from delay in license renewals. Right now, with the staff that we have, and we're averaging about 730 to 740 license renewals every other month. And for 2 people to actually sit there and go through CME documents for all these physicians is causing a huge delay in the renewing of the license, especially when the physicians choose to wait till the last 2 weeks of the renewal period and submit all the CME and expect us to be able to go through all that and get their license approved by the end of the month. So what we'd like to propose is to go through this self-certification audit and still protect the consumers by conducting an audit. 50% of the licensees will be audited the first CME cycle, and then the second 50% would be audited the following year, meaning that everybody is going to go through an audit, within the 4-year time frame.
I think it has to be well noted that the physicians are ultimately responsible, and by signing this form, which is a legal document,
Yes,
which imposes penalties and fines.
yes. Right, and we do have a mechanism in place right now for a citation and fine, which I do believe is set at about $1,000 for anybody who fails to comply with the CME. So when the audit takes place and they've indicated on this form that they've completed 100 hours, and we ask them to document those 100 hours, if they cannot, then they're cited and fined, and then also required to make up the deficiency. So I believe that the protection of the consumer is still in place, except that we're not delaying the license renewals of our physicians, but we are holding them accountable.
Right, because we're asking them to
Right.
attest
Right,
under penalty of perjury
yes,
that this is true and correct,
yes,
which means we're putting our trust in them, that they're honest people,
correct,
and we have a system, if they're not honest, to catch them.
yes.
Can you explain a little bit more about the system to catch them?
Well, once they file this self-certification, they're self-certifying and signing under penalty of perjury that I've completed X, Y, and Z. So when we do the audit system, where their name gets chosen for the audit, they will be required at that time to submit those documents as defined in section 1636, I do believe, or 1635. And if they can't come up with it, then they're going to be cited and fined for A, being dishonest about the fact that they did say they did them, and then they're also going to be required to make that up before their next renewal cycle.
How are you going to determine who's going to get audited? You said 50% is what we talked about at the last board meeting.
Right.
Sorry. How are you determining the 50%?
Well,
Not the number 50%, but who is
Who?
going to be selected?
It's gonna be a random audit of the 50% of the first, well, depending on the birth month, of course, on how many doctors at which birth month are licensed and renewed. So we'll base it on that, and it's gonna be a random audit. And I do believe that Breeze, and I have to speak with the Breeze IT people, but I do believe there's a mechanism in Breeze to do a random audit, and all we have to do is let them know how many percentage we need, and they can pull the names of those, and then we can do a form letter submitting to, that you are, being audited, now you need to submit your CME.
So is it possible, though, because you said earlier that if you do 50% every 2-year cycle, that by 4 years, everyone will be audited? Are you sure that the system will work that way, or will the same person get selected twice and the same person will not get selected either time?
I don't believe that, well, I'd have to check with the Breeze, and it may be a manual, but we can do a spreadsheet manual to see, so that to make sure that the second set of people that are being audited, or the licensees that are being audited, are not the same ones that were audited prior. So we, yeah.
Okay, Stan, okay.
So is there a point in this code where we're going to specify the percentage of physicians which are going to be audited?
No, I think that it was,
I don't think it's necessary. I mean, if the board is inclined to specify 50%, we could do that, but I don't think it's critical.
I think that if we leave it off, depending on our workload, whether we can increase the percentage or decrease the percentage, we have the choice to do that without having to go rewrite the regulation. As long as the regulation allows us the audit process, I don't believe that it's necessary to put down what percentage that we're actually going to be auditing. That would be just kind of an in-house policy.
What's our next step?
That's it. We're asking if you would be willing to move forward with this.
So now we're asking to move forward. We need a vote.
First of all, that whether you agree with the language in the regulation that we proposed.
So we're going to take each of these separately?
Should we do it separately?
I think at this time, Dr. Zamuto, it may be a bit premature to make a motion to approve this reg language, given that the first step is to pursue a legislative change to kind of align the CME period with the 2-year renewal cycle. This is going to need to come before the board again at future meetings.
So this will be just informational for right now?
Right.
So it'll be coming back for further discussion?
Correct.
Okay.
But can we entertain the self-certification?
Yeah.
Okay, so, but we'd like to see if you would approve going to a self-certification audit type CME.
I'd like to hear public comment on this.
Sure. Public comment?
I have something to say.
Wait till you get to the mic.
Okay, now, can I go, Joe?
Yeah, please do.
I'm where you are, Alan. I take tremendous pride in the fact that over the years, we've been able to say that 100% of our doctors have achieved their continuing medical education